3 a.m. The agent, wounded and terrified, runs through the bleak, twisting hallways of this impossible place. Everything is rot and ruin. His ankle has been destroyed, his skin is starting to burn, and that monster, with its decaying face and terrible smile, he knows it's getting closer. It'll be here soon. 6 p.m., earlier that night. The sun has dipped over the horizon for the day. The streetlights have flickered on in the nearby town, and almost everyone is settling in for the evening. Except, of course, for those working the night shift. Those more nocturnally inclined workers are punching the clock at the factories, manning the register at the 24-hour drugstore, and in the case of one young agent, working late into the night at the SCP Foundation. He's never been much of a night owl in the past, but as the new blood, so to speak, at this particular site, he's not in the position to argue over his work hours. So he finds himself at the coffee machine in the break room, fighting his every natural instinct and brewing a pot of coffee at nearly 10 p.m. Hopefully, it'll be enough to keep him from dozing off at his desk. The site is so much quieter at this time of night. Most of the research staff have gone home for the day, and aside from the occasional security guard, he hasn't seen another soul in over an hour. Of course, he knows that he isn't alone in the building, even when it feels that way. There are dozens of anomalies in here with him, contained in their individual cells. In fact, his office is just down the hall from one of the most infamous anomalies at the site, if the way his colleagues speak about it is anything to go by. They won't tell him the specifics, something about clearance he doesn't have yet, but he's managed to pick up a few details by eavesdropping by the water cooler or pretending to be engrossed in his own work while listening to the conversation just outside his office door. Whatever it is, it's incredibly dangerous and difficult to contain, and even harder to destroy. Not the big lizard, he's heard all about that thing. Whatever this anomaly is that his colleagues are being so secretive about, it's something different. The others actually seem scared of it. It's unsettling, seeing hardened senior researchers afraid of their subjects, but he shouldn't dwell on those thoughts, especially not now, not at night with no sounds around his office except the ticking of the clock on the wall and the steady drip of the coffee machine. He'll return it to the break room tomorrow. For now, there's no one else around who needs it. In spite of the coffee, exhaustion is knocking at the agent's door. He can feel sleep pressing down on him, drooping his eyelids and nodding his head. It's been a long week, and try as he might, he can't push the feeling away. He'll just rest his head on his desk for a few minutes. No one will ever even know. The agent wakes up to the sound of an alarm blaring, red lights flashing in the hall. How long was he asleep? A quick glance at the clock reveals that it is 2 a.m., 4 hours since he decided to rest his eyes for a few minutes. He takes a moment to get his bearings, remnants of sleep still fogging his mind. That alarm can only mean one thing. There's a containment breach. And judging by the ear-splitting volume of it all, it must be nearby. His stomach drops as he considers the possibility of a worst-case scenario. What if it got out? The entity down the hall that no one will tell him about. What if he's about to learn the details in an up-close and personal setting? No, there's no need to frighten himself. Just follow the standard procedure for a containment breach. He stands up from his desk, gathers the file he was working on, and proceeds toward the closest emergency exit. Just pretend it's a drill, he tells himself. It'll all be fine. But as he walks down the hall toward the emergency exit, the blood-red flicker of the emergency lights casts strange shadows on the once familiar landscape. The whole place looks different at night, bathed in red. Like something out of a nightmare where you try to run from a monster, but your legs will only move in slow motion. With every step, he feels his heart race faster, his skin dotted with anxious sweat. Where are all the security guards? Where's anyone at all? The quiet is unsettling, with only his footsteps to break up the silence. Wait, silence? When did the alarm stop? He was so focused on getting himself out of there, he didn't notice when the sound cut out. The emergency light is still flashing red, but all the rest of the lights are out, he realizes. Something happened to the power. Or something cut the power, he thinks with a chill. Up ahead, in the dim red light, he sees a puddle of something dark and thick on the floor. Blood? But there's no body, no signs of a struggle. As he gets closer, he realizes that the viscous liquid covering the floor is not red, but black. And it's sizzling? Whatever it is, it appears to be eating away at the floor like an exceptionally strong acid. The walls on either side are looking worse for wear too. The paint is cracked and peeling, as if left unattended for years. But it didn't look like this earlier. It couldn't have. Whatever left this pool of black slime on the floor, it's breaking down the environment around it. Everything the goop touches begins to break down, to rot. If this puddle is here, then whatever created it can't be far. The agent holds his breath for a moment, not making a sound. He just stands still and listens. There, in the silence, one quiet sound breaks through. Drip, drip, drip. Like the liquid falling in the coffee pot back in his office, but different somehow, thicker. It's coming from somewhere very close by. He glances over his shoulder. Nothing behind him. Nothing up ahead as far as he can see. Then, the agent is hit with an impulse. He hopes to every higher power he can think of that he's wrong, but he has to make sure. He tilts his head and looks up at the ceiling. Something is looking back. There's a figure crouched on the ceiling, neck craned to look the agent directly in the eye. It looks like a man, or like something that once was a man. Now it's more like a skeleton draped in rotting flesh, dripping that same horrible black liquid. It grins at him with a wide mouth, eyes like cavernous holes. What skin he can see is gray and slick, hanging loose from the bone. As he meets its gaze, the thing begins to crawl down the wall, reaching toward him. The agent's mind goes blank with terror, pure animal instinct kicking in and urging his feet to run as fast as they can in the other direction. But the path back to his office is no longer clear. As he runs, the agent neglects to look at the ground in front of him. He doesn't see the puddle of black, viscous slime waiting to trip him. His foot hits the slime and slides out from under him. He hits the ground hard, coating his hands and knees with the goop. As soon as he touches it, it begins to burn his skin. He can feel it eating through the sole of his shoe, his sock, to the skin on the bottom of his foot. He cries out in pain and struggles to his feet. No matter how much it hurts, he has to keep moving. He can't let that thing get to him. He grabs at the wall, pulling himself up. Again, he misses something crucial in his surroundings. He does not notice the gray, rotted hand reaching up through the solid matter of the floor, grasping at his ankle. He has no idea it is even there, until something slashes through his Achilles tendon, sending him careening back toward the floor, clutching his injured ankle with a scream. As he sits there, helpless, he watches the arm continue to reach through the floor. It is followed by a shoulder, another arm, and then that face is grinning at him again. The creature pulls itself up through the floor and drags itself toward the agent. When it reaches for him this time, he can't run. He can't escape. He feels its cold hands wrap around his legs, pulling him with a strength that should be impossible for such a decrepit-looking creature. It drags him down into the floor bit by bit, until everything goes dark. When the agent wakes again, he's lying on a cold, hard floor in an unfamiliar room. His head is aching, his eyes are blurry, and the skin of his hands feels like one big raw nerve. The sight turns his stomach, but he doesn't have time to focus on his injuries. First, he needs to figure out where he is and how he got here. The only thing he remembers is that disgusting creature, like a walking corpse, dragging him into a hole in the floor. No, not a hole. Into the floor itself. Somehow, the thing was able to pull him through solid matter. At first, he thought he might be underneath the Foundation site, in some sort of hidden basement, but as he takes in his surroundings, he realizes that he is nowhere near the site. This is somewhere new. The thought makes his blood run cold. Whatever reason the entity had for bringing him here, it can't be anything good. But there's one good thing about the agent's current situation. The entity isn't here right now. For the moment, he's alone. Alone in the lair of some unknown horror with no doubt malicious intent, but alone nonetheless. That means time to plan, time to perhaps even escape. The agent checks his pockets, looking for any type of weapon. Nothing in there except for his phone and a pen. The phone has no service at all, confirming his fears. He's nowhere near the site. He might not even be in the same world at all anymore. The phone is functionally useless, and the pen isn't good for much either, unless he wants to write down his dying will and testament. No, can't resign himself to that fate yet. He's a smart man, smart enough to land a career as a researcher at the SCP Foundation. He can figure something out. He has to. He pulls himself up onto his feet and takes in every detail of his surroundings that he can make out. It looks like he's in a large, dark, concrete room. At the far side of the room, he can see an open doorway leading into what appears to be a hallway. It's difficult to tell. The hall is pitch black. He doesn't particularly want to venture into the darkness beyond, but the longer he stays still, the more of a target he is. So, the only way out appears to be through. With shaking hands and his heart thumping away in his chest, the young agent steps into the blackness. He walks with his hands out in front of him, feeling his way through the hall. He might touch something dangerous, more of that slime perhaps. What's a little more damage if it helps him detect a threat early enough to possibly escape? The hall is like a maze, splitting off in multiple directions, stopping at sudden cul-de-sacs, veering off down sharp corners. It seems deliberately designed to disorient and dizzy. The more he tries to navigate it, the more the agent is beginning to feel like a lab rat. He wonders if the entity is watching him struggle, hanging from the ceiling with that same gruesome grin, waiting for him to exhaust himself so it can finish him off. He can't tell how long he walks. Hours? Days? He walks until his feet feel worn to the bone, until his head swims and his mouth feels like sandpaper. Maybe this is all he'll ever do again. Just walk and walk and walk in the darkness. The hallway dumps out into a new room, or maybe it's the same room he first woke up in. It looks the same, dull gray concrete as far as the eye can see. There, in the corner, is his discarded phone. It is the same room. He's gone in one giant circle. The agent sinks to his knees, laughing a humorless laugh as tears fill his eyes. It's all so horrible. It's all so absurd. And then, the dripping sound again. A drop falls on the crown of his head, burning his scalp. He looks up and is almost relieved to see the monster looking down at him. It opens its mouth as if to speak and spits a stream of the thick black mucus onto the agent's face. It burns like no pain he's ever felt before, and he reaches up to wipe the slime away from his skin, from his eyes, his mouth. As he does, he feels the skin coming away with it, sloughing off in handfuls that plop wetly on the ground. The agent can feel himself dissolving as the corrosive liquid runs down his back, over his shoulders. Wiping it away does nothing to stop it, as his face goes the way of his hands. He is melting away. He opens his eyes to see the monster standing in front of him, mouth open wide and gleeful. No sound comes out, but its shoulders heave as if the walking corpse were laughing. The mad, manic, desperate laughter pours out of the agent's mouth again, and he laughs until his throat melts and his vocal cords dissolve. Back at the SCP Foundation, the missing agent is declared killed in action. Nothing was left behind of him except a stack of paperwork and a pool of black, corrosive slime. Everyone knows what happened to him while he was alone on the night shift. He was a casualty of the Containment breach, another victim of the elusive, the terrifying SCP-106. SCP-106 resembles the body of an elderly human man at an advanced stage of decomposition. Details of its appearance vary from encounter to encounter, but it is always rotting in some way. It is not especially agile or fast, but rather acts as an ambush predator, remaining still for days at a time before its prey comes close enough to grab. One of its favored methods is to scale a vertical surface and remain suspended upside down there. When prey comes close, SCP-106 will attack the major organs, muscle groups, or tendons in order to incapacitate them. Then it will pull them into its pocket dimension lair. Its preferred prey are humans between the ages of 10 and 25. The mere presence of SCP-106 causes matter, both organic and inorganic, to corrode. Whatever it touches will begin to break down within seconds of exposure in the form of rusting, rotting, cracking, and above all creating a black, mucus-like substance resembling the same one that coats SCP-106's body. I have a fairly strong stomach after researching the things I do for such a long time, but I will admit that photographs of SCP-106's effects render me a bit nauseated. The corrosive effect lingers and progresses for up to 6 hours after contact, regardless of the anomaly's presence or attempts to stop the corrosion. This corrosive ability allows SCP-106 to pass through solid matter, leaving a grotesque snail trail of black mucus in its wake. It is also capable of using its pocket dimension to vanish into solid matter, then reappear from another area connected to the initial point of entry. The pocket dimension itself consists of halls and rooms through which SCP-106 can stalk its victims to its heart's content. It enjoys the cruelty of the hunt so greatly that it has sometimes been observed to release its captives just so it can chase them down and capture them all over again. The containment procedures for SCP-106 have undergone multiple revisions since I first began reviewing the file. The more the Foundation has learned about the entity, the more information they have added to the official file. However, at every stage of the process, one instruction has persisted. No physical interaction with SCP-106 is allowed at any time. Any physical interaction requested must be approved by at least a 2/3 vote from O5 Command and may only be undertaken in AR-2 maximum security sites after a general evaluation of non-essential staff. All staff on site must remain at least 60 meters away from the containment cell at all times, barring a containment breach. If the entity moves beyond the planned containment area, then staff may do whatever is necessary to avoid being taken. SCP-106 must be contained in a sealed container made from lead-lined steel. The container is to be sealed within 40 layers of identical material, and each layer must be separated by no less than 36 centimeters of empty space. There's also a secondary containment area comprised of 16 spherical cells, each filled with various fluids and randomly assembled surfaces and supports. It is also outfitted with a light system capable of illuminating the area with at least 80,000 lumens of light at a moment's notice. All of these elements have been added over time as research and observation has indicated that SCP-106 can be confused by a complicated or random layout. It is also displayed an aversion to various liquids and to sudden direct light. If any corrosion is spotted on any of the containment cell surfaces, any surfaces within 200 meters of SCP-106, or most gruesomely of all, on the staff members themselves, it must be reported to site security as soon as possible. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-189, Hair Imitating Parasite.